Okay, so good evening and hi everyone. I'm Zuyen, a member of IROS team. I'm also a third year student from the University Technology Malaysia. I will be your MC for today's talk. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining today's event. Welcome to our industrial talk, how to write a scalable Flutter application. It's organized by IROS UTM. So before we begin, I want to introduce our speaker today, who is Miss Chong Shean here. She is a senior software engineer at Commerce AG. She is also the director of Women Who Code at KL branch. Women Who Code is a community that focuses on how to empower the women in the tech field. And on top of that, she is also the Google developer expert in Flutter of Malaysia. So I think that title itself has pretty explained a lot her skill in Flutter. She also wrote quite a lot of articles in Medium about Flutter. So do check it out, guys. And I think that's all from me. So, Miss, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Suyen. Thanks for the kind introduction. So our topic today will be on how to write a scalable Flutter application. And since Flutter is a popular framework to write cross-platform application, I think this topic has been in demand. So I'm very proud to be able to share with you today. Now, before we start, I will just do a quick introduction about me. So my name is Yong Shean, and I'm a Google developer expert in Dart and Flutter. So I'm also working full-time as a front-end developer at Commerce Solutions. And on the side, I'm also helping out in Women Who Code Kuala Lumpur, which aims to play a role in helping women to succeed in their career in technology. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and also follow me on Medium. And for the code examples, I will publish them in my GitHub repository. So stay tuned if you are interested. So here's the agenda for today. Since we have quite a long session today, it's about 2 hours, but I will try to make it short and easy for everyone to understand. So for the first part, we will focus on introducing Flutter and how to make it work. So we will go into the basics like looking into the widgets and knowing the different types of widgets, the stateless and stateful widgets. Also, we will go into the layouts and learn how to navigate between pages. Then after that, we will have a 10 to 15 minutes break. And then we will continue with the scalable part. So how to make our app more scalable with streams and block. So then after that, we will explore on the folder structure and architecture. And if we still have time, then I will also touch a bit on the testing. Okay, next. Yeah, so and today I will use not only one app, but 3 apps to show you a better overview of what Flutter is capable of doing, from the simplest app to a more complex one. So without further ado, let's get started. So if you are watching us live, you can type in the chat box number 1 or 2. So to get to know you all, whether you are using Flutter for the first time or you already have some experience, but you want to learn how to make your app more scalable. So type 1 if you are first time using Flutter. You might heard of Flutter or not, and you have still very little idea of what it is, and you're here to find out more and get started. For 2 means you already have some experience, you have built 1 or 2 apps before, and you're looking for some ideas on how to make your app more scalable. So I will see the comment in chat box. Yeah, so I can see there's a mix of 1 and 2, but mostly 1. So welcome to the Flutter world, and I hope that today you will get to learn something, and then I think you'll be able to build a simple app by the end of the session today. All right, so okay, since we have quite many people who are who have only heard of Flutter for the first time, I will just take a few minutes to talk about what is Flutter. So, Flutter is an open source framework that is made by Google, and its purpose is to build a multi-platform application. So the platforms are Android, iOS, and beyond that, you can also build for web, desktop. So it's pretty powerful. And then it's actually not very new now. It's founded in May 2017, and the first stable version was released on December 2018. So by now, it's already the third or fourth year. So you can expect a pretty stable version now. You can safely use it in your production app. And then it's written in Dart. So when you are you are writing a Flutter application, you will need to know Dart. But don't worry, Dart is quite easy to learn. It's object-oriented based. It's also strongly typed, and it can be compiled both ahead of time and just in time. So Flutter took advantage of this fact to use the JIT speed to speed up the development, and the AOT will give a better performance and optimization during the release time. So, and then it also has a huge community, and by now it has already surpassed React Native, which has 102,000 stars. Right now it has more than 139,000 stars on GitHub and more than 1,000 contributors. And lastly, it's also related. It has a great community support. So don't have to worry if you are stuck. You can find a lot of tutorials online. You can also find a lot of Stack Overflow questions. And last but not least, you have Gde Support. So from people like me, we will regularly give talks, write tutorials to help people to understand Flutter and to solve their problems. And there are many reasons to love Flutter. If you don't already know, Flutter is open source, and it also has an open license, which is MIT, so you don't have to worry if you are building a commercial application. And you can use Flutter to write code that can be compiled to many platforms. So if you want to build an app that can run on both Android and iOS, you just have to write once in Dart. You don't have to even learn Java or Kotlin or Swift for iOS. So you just have to learn once. And now it also supports the web and desktop. So if you are building a web app, you can also use Flutter. And since it has hot reload and hot restart, it really helps developers like us to speed up the development, because when we make any changes in our code, it's very fast to see the changes. You don't have to wait for it to build, and then after that only you see the changes, or you saw an error, then you have to go back and make the changes again and wait. So with the hot reload and hot restart function, you can save a lot of time. And it also has a some UI toolkits out of the box. So you have the Material UI, you have the Cupertino UI for Apple. So you don't have to import external packages to get the UI toolkit. It's already built into Flutter, and it's declarative and composable. So later you will see when we are running our first Flutter app, you can see how we declare the widgets, how we list down the UI components is very composable. You can use multiple smaller widgets to compose and become a bigger widget. Of course, there's the accessibility features baked in. You don't have to do it yourself. And if you ever need to integrate with native packages, so sometimes you need to communicate with platform-specific features. One example is for example, if you are building a AR or mixed reality application, then you will need to communicate with AR Core on Android or use ARKit on iOS. So you still don't lose out on that when you're using Flutter, because you can always use the platform channels to do the communication. And lastly, it's very performant. Unlike React Native, you can actually run the app at 60 up to 60 FPS, or even up to 120 FPS on devices that support that. So it's you have so many reasons to use Flutter, but you should also pay attention to when you should not use Flutter, because it's not one tool for everything, right? So when not to use Flutter, first is if you are building games. So I know that now you can use Flutter to build some games, some simpler ones. But if you are building a more complex game, like a tool, something that require a more sophisticated 2D or 3D engine, then you might want to consider other tools like Unity. And also, when you have specific native SDK needs, for now, what I know is it still doesn't support the Apple Watch OS and TV OS. If you are thinking of building those, then you have to use Swift or Objective-C to develop natively. And if you are going to do something that use a lot of audio editing or mixing, then probably it's not the time yet, because now it doesn't have a sophisticated audio engine. So you might want to reconsider with other approach. And lastly, desktop or web support. This I put an asterisk there because the support is actually stable now, but still early. Means that if you want to use certain packages, let's say you used to develop web applications in React or Vue, then you were using external packages to support certain features, and then you come to Flutter and you want to build a web app, and then you found that, hey, actually there is no such packages yet. So this is what I mean by it's still early. But if you are confident, you can write your own package. If it's not available on the pub.dev yet, then you are welcome to do so. Okay, so that's a short introduction about Flutter, and you can stay with me if you are convinced to learn Flutter starting today. So in the first part, we are going to talk about how to make a simple Flutter app. And in this part, we will only focus on how to make it work. So it's not too overwhelming for those who are new to Flutter. Okay. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you have already installed Flutter in your machine. So if you have already if you have already installed, then you can run Flutter Doctor in your terminal to check that if you have installed correctly. So this is the command whenever people ask me about installation issues or they cannot start Flutter, then this is the command you can use to check if it is installed correctly, if there's no SDK missing. Very useful. So if you have already run Flutter Doctor and it tells you that everything is okay, then you can start to create a new app by using the Flutter create command. So this will help you to create a simple Bootstrap app so that you can get started. And then since it's written in Dart, so you might want to check out the language tour. So there is an official guide on the Dart language tour. It basically introduces you to Dart and the key syntaxes, the important ones that you need to know. There are not many actually. You will see later if you already know object-oriented, at least one OOP language, then you will find that actually very easy to learn. Okay, actually, before I continue with the slide, I will show you the code demo. So let's see. Yeah, so this is a weather app that I have created for a demo last year. And here we will see there are quite a lot of files, but we will start from the entry point, which is the main.dart. Let me close this. So if you are like me, you are using Visual Studio Code as your IDE, then you will be familiar with this interface. So what I do is I will usually go to here and then press on this one to start. But if you cannot find this, then probably you have not installed the right extension. So in Visual Studio Code, you can install the Dart and also Flutter extension. And then after that, you will have a lot of built-in tools that help you to develop with Flutter. Sorry. Okay, now let's go back to the file. So here we have the entry file main.dart. This file will exist in every Flutter project. So in here, you will see that there is a main function. And this main function is the entry point. So what does it do? We have a run app function here. This will take in a widget argument. So this widget argument is our Flutter app. So you can see that it's actually wrapping a weather app that is defined here. And here you will see how class are defined in Dart. And this class extends a stateless widget. So now you see the first type of widget in Flutter. Stateless widget just compared to stateful widget, it doesn't have a state inside that will change based on user interaction. So here you see that it's a very simple widget that contains a material app. So we usually use material app as the top level widget for our Flutter app. And here you can give a title. You can define the routing here, which we will go into later. And then, yeah, so here it says the initial route is the routes.home. We can press on this one and see what is in routes.home. So routes.home turns out to be just a string that is a /. So we usually use / to indicate the root page. And you also see the other routes that we have in this weather app, that is the manage city. So just give it a name here. So later we can use this for routing, or we can also use this to display the URL in the address bar if you are building this for the web. Okay, I will go to routing later. Let's look at the home widget first. So let's have a look at what is in our home page. So our home page is another stateless widget. And here we have some other attributes. We have the on tab, background gradient, and city weather. And where is this called? It's actually, okay, let's take a look. Who is calling this? So it's from the routing, because we are putting the dot route here. So actually here, when we put in the routing, is a material page route that routes to the home page. And then these are the arguments that we pass in. So we pass in the background gradient and the city weather. And then here inside, you see a widget tree. So everything here is a widget. Container is a widget. Even padding like edge insets is a widget. Scaffold is a widget, and so on. So here you have a huge container that contains a scaffold. If the city weather is null, and if not, it will contains the city page. So since now we are seeing this one, it says select a city in manage city. So this is actually this page. So you will see that here, okay, we have the scaffold. So this whole thing is a scaffold. And then we have the add bar that says get started. So you can see here. You can also apply styles to your text if you want. Then after that, you have some actions. So where are these actions? The actions are actually here. So if you tap on this, you will see there is one action as a pop-up menu button, as we define here. And we have the manage city option. Okay, so I will not click that first. Let's continue to look at the page. So in the body of our scaffold, we have a column. So column is a layout widget. And then in this column, we have multiple children. So who are the children? We have the text, we have some spacing, and then have a button. So you can see text, some spacing, and a button. So you can define the alignment here. And for your information, we have another type of widget called row. But here we are using column because we are stacking them vertically. So when we put our children in the column, you will see them laid down in a top-down fashion. Okay, then let's see our button. Our button has a label of Manage City, and it has an on-press handler that will do the navigation. So here you will see how we navigate to a different page. So if we tap on this button, it will actually go to the Manage City page, the Manage City route. So this is what a navigator does. But for now, we will go back and then see what else that we have in the home page. So this is the condition if the city weather is not now. And this one you will see if, let's say, we provide an argument to the home page with city weather, and then you will see a different rendering. But we will not go into that now. Let's go and see the Manage City page. Actually, I saw a question in the chat. I think we can answer now. Can I ask about the routing setting class, why we want to set to abstract? Yes, so here I set to abstract because we don't actually have the we don't actually instantiate the class routes. We are just using the static string from it. So we can make the class abstract. Yeah, it's just one way that I use to organize some attributes. Some people would just put it outside, like I don't need this. I don't need to put in a routing class. I just put everything outside. And then you can still import and use this function in your other Dart files. So it's not a problem. It's just personal preference. All right, now let's go to the Manage City page. So just now you see that I was tapping on the button, and the button is routing to the Manage City routes, which is handled here. Here it returns the Manage City page.route. So now we come to the Manage City page. So what's inside? Okay, so this is another widget, but this time it's a stateful widget. And then inside the stateful widget, we have a container. So I have a big container that wrap everything. And with container, you can define the padding and the background. So I use this to define the background color, which I use a gradient. And then, of course, we have a scaffold. So a scaffold has an app bar. This time it has the Manage City text in the app bar. You can also give the background color and elevation if you want. Since I want the transparent effect, so I just give a transparent background color and 0 elevation. And then after that, we have a column again. So we have already learned that column will have its children stacked together vertically. So again, we are seeing the Kuala Lumpur and Putrajaya stack top down. So what is in our column? I included some space at the top. It's not visible, but there's some space here. Then after that, actually, I included a list view. So list view is like a column, but it is scrollable. Imagine if the list gets longer, then you want user to be able to scroll. But of course, now we only have 2. So when you drag, it doesn't scroll. All right, then you can define how you want to display the list view. So list view is also a built-in widget. And how you define it is using the item builder. Item builder, you can see the function signature here. It takes in a function of build context and integer, and it returns a widget. So here I have a function of context. I put an underscore because I don't need to use this information. And then I have the index. So I will need to use this index later to determine which city weather to pull and display in each tile. So here I have city weather tile. And from here, if I click into this, you will see the implementation of it. This I put in the different file that defines how each tile should look. So let's have a look at this tile. It's a stateless widget. And then it takes in city weather and the on-tap handler. And then it has a gesture detector. So a gesture detector, when you wrap a widget with a gesture detector, it means that you want to apply some gesture listener on it. So if you want to, let's say, when users are tapping on your tile, you want it to do something to run a function, then you can use gesture detector, and then you define the on tap. It also has other types of gesture, like on double tap, on force press, on drag, on long press. So a lot of options. But for now, we will just use on tap. And then if you want to see what is the function, it's actually passed in from the parent. So on tap, it will navigate to home. So this is another way of defining the navigation. Sometimes you don't want to just push something to the navigation stack. You also want to remove the previous one. One example is let's say you have a shopping cart and then you have a checkout page. So after user has already done the payment, you don't want user to tap back to go back to the checkout page because that will confuse them. So you can use push name and remove until to do that. So when you do this, you are telling Flutter that, hey, for my navigation stack, I want to go to I want to go back to route home and remove everything before. So this is what it means. So okay, now back to the city weather tile and look at some other ways to define the layout of the widget. So okay, now we see the container. So again, I'm using a container because in this one I can define the height and the padding, and of course the box decoration for defining the background and so on. And then you will see that, hey, now you have a row instead of column. So what does that mean? Column is top down. You can see here you have the Kuala Lumpur Putrajaya stack vertically. Row is you stack horizontally. So inside this row, you have the city name, you have some space, and then you have some images, and then you have some text. So let's go one by one. So first is the text. Since it's the first child of the row is on the leftmost, then you have some space of width 20. Then you have another container, which is this part. And inside the container, you have a column. So you can see you can mix and match these things to compose the layout that you want. So you can have a row within column and then a column within rows. It's not a problem. So here you have a column, and then this column contains of a row and a text. So the row is this part. You have the weather icon, and also the temperature. Then below that, you have a text that shows the weather description. So you can see how easy it is to define the layout in the declarative way. And you can apply the style to everything. And if you need to, let's say I want to do something when user is hovering over this part, you can also add a gesture detector over any of these widgets to achieve that. Okay. Now we have covered the tile part. Now we can go back to the Manage City page and see what other widgets are here. So here you see the action button. And then this action button is this one, the Add City button. So you can see the label, and then what will happen when you press on the button. So if I press on this one, it will display a dialog because I'm pressing the show dialog. I'm calling the show dialog function, and this will display a form that contains the title, which is enter a city name, and then I have a text form field. So form is also built in Flutter. You don't have to import an external package. Everything is built in. And then when you enter a city name, then you press OK. That should, what would that do? That would, okay, when you press OK, that would dismiss the dialog and return the result. So here it will check if the result is a valid city weather, then you will call the set state to add the result to the city. So for example, if I don't type anything, then it will do some validation. So you can define validation here. If the value is null or empty, then you return a message. The message will effectively be shown here. So I have to use this keyboard. I see. Okay, so when I press OK, then it will return a result. Sorry, where is it? Yes, here. So it will return a result in the type city weather, and then it will be added to our city weathers list, which is used to render the list view. So you can see actually within just 100 overlines, you can achieve a function like that, which I think is quite impressive. And it's pretty clear of what it can do within the same widget. So, okay, what's next? So now we have the Manage City page covered. Then we also want to display the weather for each tile. So if you tap on one of these, then it will arrive at this page. Let's see, where is this page? So we can try to find the on tap. So it's here. So it will, sorry, it's not this one. It actually is. So it's pushing to the home page because our home page is has two functions. One is to show a get started page if the city weather is empty, or you actually show the weather information if it's not. So we can once again go back to home and see what will be displayed if the city weather is not now. So we have already covered the first case. If it's now we can go down and see if it's not. So what will be shown here is still a scaffold. By now you're already familiar with scaffold. You will see the city name in uppercase, and you also have the same menu on the top right. Okay, what's interesting is at the body. So I have a center widget, which will help me to center everything inside here. And then inside you have a container, and inside the container you have column. So you can now dissect the children of the column. You have the size box, some space here. You have a row, because I have multiple items here that is laid down horizontally. And then after that, you have, okay, what's next? You have another size box here. And then you have a default tab controller, which I will explain later on the on how to implement tab navigation. And that's it. So that's all we have in the home page. Now we can go one by one again. So you can see in the row, we have the weather description here. And then after that, we have some space and the date format. So here. And then we have the temperature. So since this part is stacked vertically, so we have it contained in a column. And then you have the text. So just now you also see there is an expanded thing here. What does this mean? The expanded means, let's say you have, since our parent is a row, so the parent of expanded is a row. Expanded, when it wraps over a widget, it means that I want to expand that widget. So what is it expanding? It's expanding this column. So expanding means I want it to take as much space as possible. So you can see that here, after the expanded, I don't need to explicitly define a size box to put some space, because I have the expanded. All right. Yeah, so I saw a question in the chat. Sorry, I think I didn't explain what set state do. So here you have a stateful widget, right, in the City page. And why we need to use a stateful widget instead of a stateless widget? Because we want to call the set state function. So where is the set state? Let me search for it. Yes. So this is triggered when the dialog is closed. And then if it checks the result is a city weather, then I call this set state function to add the result to the list. So here it means that I want to execute this function, and then I want to ask Flutter to redraw. So once I call the set state, then whichever function that depends on, or whichever widget that depends on the city weather's state will build again. So yeah, this is the Flutter's built-in state management. Is useful for a simple widget like this. when you want to contain the state just within that widget itself, you can use set state. Okay, now back to the home page. So now comes to the interesting part, which is the default tab controller. So here I have two tabs. One is today, which is the default tab, and then we have tomorrow. So in each tab, you have a scrollable list. Tomorrow, you also have the same scrollable list with different data, but I think, yeah, we have different set of data for each one. So, okay, now let's see what's inside the default tab controller. And for your information, default tab controller is also built in. You don't have to implement it yourself. You can just use as it is. So first you need to tell, okay, how many tabs do you need? You need two tabs, one for today, another for tomorrow. And then you will define the child. So here, what's inside the child is you have an align widget. So this is useful if you want to set a custom alignment. And then here you can include a tab bar. So tab bar is this one, is this widget. And then this tab bar is also scrollable. When it gets longer, then you will see that it's scrollable. You can define a custom indicator. So here I have a circle tab indicator. If you want to see what this is something that you can paint. So Flutter allows you to do this. If you want to paint something onto the canvas, you can define your own class that extends box painter. Of course, now you don't have to know all this. It's only useful when you want to draw your own widget and something that you cannot achieve by using the built-in widgets, then you can use this. Okay, I will not go into detail for that, just letting you know that there's a lot of room for customization in Flutter. All right, now we come to the tabs. So we have two tabs. One is today, another is tomorrow. Again, you can define the text styles and so on. And then after that, you have some spacing here. After you have the container. So this container, I have defined an explicit height. And inside the container, you have the tab bar view. So the tab bar view is essentially this thing, this whole list. I should scroll over here a bit. So when I tap on each of these, I think now it is cached, so you don't see a delay. So when it's first fetching, then because it's a future, so future is something that you get asynchronously. For example, if you are calling an API and then you get some weather information back, then you can use a future to contain that. So when you have a future, you want to render it on your widget, you will use a future builder. So this is what we do. Here, I'm just manually building the future, and then I give it a fake delay of 3 seconds. And what it returns in the future is a list of our weather. Our weather is a model class that contains the information that we need to render these tiles. So you have the hour, temperature, weather description, and so on. And after you have got the future, when it receives it, it will pass it to the builder. And this will actually check. So if it has data, because the future will have multiple states when it is fetching, so it's loading, still waiting for the future to complete. And when it has already received the data, then you can do something about it, like rendering it. So here you will see that, okay, if the snapshot has data, means it has received, completed the future, then I will show a container. If not, I will just show a circular progress indicator, a loading widget. Okay, so now since it has already complete, it will render a container with a list view. So again, you can define your list view. This time, because I want it to scroll horizontally, so I can put the scroll direction as horizontal. And then everything else is the same. You have the item builder that defines, okay, what you want to display in each tile. So I'm passing the data from the snapshot. And then since I have the index information from the item builder, I can say I can put the index here. So it will only display, it will display in the correct order. And then after that, it has, you can also define the separator builder. So our separator here is just some space. It's a size box of width 12. You can see there are some space between each tile. Now here, if you want to put other widgets like a line, a divider, you can also do that. And after that, give it an item count so that it knows how many items that this has. Actually, if you leave this out, then you can achieve the infinite scrolling, but I will not cover in this part. So let's have a look at the Our Weather tile. So again, is another stylus widget. And this one also has a container. I can define the background with a gradient. So it has a gradient in each tile. And then inside that you have column. So each column, and then inside the column you have some text that shows the hour, an image, the text, and the temperature. So maybe now I haven't shown you how do we show a custom image. So a lot of times you have your own asset. Designer gave you some, or you want to display some images in your app. So this is how you do it. First, actually, you need to go to prospect.yaml file. And inside here, if you scroll down, you will see a section, assets. So here is where you define what are your assets for the app. So it can be images, it can be files, it can be anything. So you just declare them here. There are a few ways to declare this. You can declare as multiple files, or you can just put the whole folder. For me, I like to put the whole folder here, so I don't have to declare them one by one. And after you have done this, then you can use the image.asset. And then after that, actually, this is just a function that returns a string. So the string that it returns is actually just the path itself. So you need to include the base path and then the name of the file. So where you put it is where you declare it. It is here in the assets, images. So I have 3. So I have already declared them in the pub spec. I can use them. So in my images asset, I can just put in the path of each of these. So this is what it is. And yep, there we have the tiles and the list view. Yeah, I think so far I have got most of the important stuff covered. Let's see if we have questions related to this that I can answer. Oh yeah, so the code for this, don't worry about it. I will share it. I will share it later. Okay. How do I go back to the slides? It's showing me in another window. Let me put it back here. Okay, so now you have already seen that everything is a widget. And then you have also learned the differences between stateless and stateful widget. And you also learn about the using setState function. And just now we have already see an app example. It's a weather app that I built. So this is the link to the code that I showed just now. Feel free to clone it and try it yourself. You can also do some customization. You can make it more interesting than I did. And then for more tutorials on layouts, I could recommend this page. It has a lot of code labs that you can explore. It has many types of pages, types of layouts you can play with. So feel free to check it out. And then for the navigation, actually just now I show the method to navigate with the built-in navigator, but there's also a package that you can use that is called a Go Router. And I recommend you to watch this video to see the features of Go Router and how you can use it to manage your routes even more easier. Okay, I'm not gonna play this now. So yes, thanks for staying with me until so far. But now actually it's time for a break because I also need to get some water. And yeah, we will continue later for part 2 to make the app more scalable. So now maybe we take a break for 15 minutes. Do we have 15 minutes?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay, so we will now take a break for 15 minutes and see you later.
All right, so guys, we'll have a 15 minutes break. See you guys in 15 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Are we ready?
Yeah, I think our audience is ready.
Okay, if you're ready, then let's get started for part 2. So this part is all about how to make our app more scalable. Now that we have already learned the basics in how to create a widget, how to configure different layouts, how to do customizations, you also learn how to navigate. So now is how do we structure our project, which state management pattern to use to ensure that our app is easy to change, easy to maintain. So this is what we will cover in part 2. So first, I would like to give you a warning of whatever I said in this talk is going to be highly opinionated. There are certain approaches and packages that I personally prefer or suited my project needs. And of course, it's up to you to choose which package you want to use. But I usually want people to tell me, well, you have done project A, B, and C, and knowing the scale of those projects, which approach would you recommend me to start? Or what are the tools and packages that are your favorites and why? So, disclaimer ahead, I'm going to share with you based on my own experience. If you have other thoughts, feel free to share them in the chat. And yeah, that's the intention of our workshop today. Now we can start. So by now you have seen in the app that set state is built in and it's very easy and straightforward to understand. It's very useful when you just want to establish a local state that is ephemeral to the widget that you can neatly contain within a widget. But it's not so good when you want to handle a global state or part of the state you want to persist between sessions. So if you use set state all over an app, then it can become a maintenance nightmare pretty quickly because your state is scattered all over the place. It also discourages the separation of concerns because it's usually used within the same class as the UI code that you have seen just now. And in the sense that you are mixing UI and business logic together. But of course, in a tiny app, it's not a big deal when it comes to this one. But then it becomes a concern quickly when you have more than just a couple of screens or when you want to add more logic into it. So how can we better handle state management? So state management, to me, choosing which state management library to use is the biggest decision we have to make before building an app, because that will essentially determine how you will structure your code and decide which way to suffer is the least painful. And why is it a pain to decide which library to use is because there are literally hundreds of choices. And I will prove to you in the next slide to show you how you can overthink about this. So this is a chart that I found on Twitter from this guy called Mike. So he has a very detailed analysis of different state management packages in Flutter so far. And this is updated January 31st this year. So it's still pretty new. You can trust his metrics. And then it puts the ranking based on different criteria like the number of likes, the when it's updated, the code coverage, the documents, popularity, and so on. Yeah, but I'm not gonna go through every state management here. As I mentioned, I just want to tell you what I personally prefer. So for me, I like an approach that is reactive and has a unidirectional flow and immutable states. So when it comes to unidirectional flow, the first thing that comes to my mind would be Redux. So if you are coming from a web development background, you might already be familiar with this. For those who are not, I will just quickly explain the concept because what I'm going to talk after this is a pattern that shares some similarity with Redux. So, okay, let's look at this diagram and we can start with the store. Store is where all the state is. And the state within the store would define what to display in the UI. And from the UI, you can dispatch dispatch an action which will be handled by the reducer that is responsible for updating the state. So for those who are new to Redux, I hope this doesn't confuse you, but you don't have to know the details. Just knowing the general idea of this, because in Redux it has the separation of concern because all the business logics are contained within the action and reducer. While the UI is only responsible for rendering based on the state. So in Redux, it also has immutability because the states are never mutated outside of the data flow and it's unidirectional. So because it's unidirectional, it guarantees that the application will behave in a predictable manner, which will make debugging much easier. But the drawback is it has a lot of boilerplate, and the idea of having actions and reducers is mind-bending to a lot of people. Even to experienced developers, it can be difficult sometimes to find a piece of code that changes the behavior because the logic could be spread across multiple actions and reducers, and sometimes they are placed in different files. So the relationship between them is not always easy to see. I actually used to use Redux when I'm working on my first project in the company. But later on, with all the boilerplates, that leads me to looking for alternative solution that have the same advantage as Redux, but without these drawbacks. So that's what leads me to Block. And what caught my attention is actually a bit similar to Redux, but with less boilerplates. So Block is also predictable and is designed to be easy to understand, very testable and composable. So to me, being predictable and composable are the most important criteria because you want to use an approach that makes your app easy to debug and at the same time easy to reuse and link multiple smaller components together, especially when you are building a complex application. So block is where all your states and business logics are contained, and then your UI would render or react based on the block states. Okay. And it's similar to Redux because in Redux, your UI would dispatch an action, whereas in Block, your UI would trigger an event, or more specifically, adding an event to the stream, which I will talk about later. And then the Block would process the events that it received. After that, it make changes to the states and then sending the new states to the stream. So whichever stream that the UI is listening to, then the UI would render based on the state and essentially react to the state changes. So that's easy enough. And there is also a simplified version of the block. They are called qubits. So, in contrast to the blocks, qubit will expose functions. So here, instead of Instead of events, you have functions that can be invoked by the UI to trigger the state changes. So in other words, qubits are just blocks without the events. And they are very useful when you don't have to transform your event streams for more advanced operations, like when you want to do some debouncing for autocomplete or search, or for logging and analytics purposes. In fact, that's what I use most of the time. I always start with qubits and then only convert them to blocks when I need to. Now, let's talk about streams, because streams are an important concept to understand when it comes to the block pattern. Even if you're not going to use block in the end, I think it's very useful to know when you need to subscribe or unsubscribe a type of data that comes in a stream. Okay, so what is a stream? A stream is a sequence. It's a sequence of data, of asynchronous data. So I found this interesting illustration from a YouTube video that explains about block. You can check it out in the link if you're interested. So you can imagine streams as data flowing down a river and waiting for someone to grab it. So that's what the stream does in Dart. It sends data events for a listener to grab. So the listener is the receiver. And with streams, you can send one data event at a time, while the other parts of your app can listen for those events. So the such events can be collections, maps, or any other type of data that you have created. Streams can also, for error handling, streams can also send errors, not just data. And you can also stop the stream anytime you want. Okay, now enough of theories. It's time to put them to practice and get our hand dirty. So just imagine that you have received a request from a friend who said, hey, I know that you can build an app. Can you build an app that can help me to increment the number of steps as I tap on the screen? Okay, then you are thinking, yes, I can build this with Flutter. Let me see how to build this. So for this one, I will show you another tool that I like to use. It's called Very Good CRI. It's a CRI tool that can help you to bootstrap your new project. So whenever you want to start a new app, you can use this CRI, and it will help you to set up a bunch of files and folder structure. Also help you to set up the links. So you can check this out. And this is also what we are going to do today. And after you have installed the CLI, then you can just use this command to create a new app. So you can type very good create counter app. So this is just the name of the app that we are going to create. Okay, now I will show you the code. So I will leave the emulator here, but let's start from scratch. So just now we have the very good create. So counter app, let's call it counter app demo. All right, so just give it a few seconds for it to generate the files. Then we can get started. Okay, so it says it has already created. Now we can take a look at the newly created app. All right, now here. Okay, let's see what it has created for us. We can try to run this first. So go here, launch. Looks like I have the Flutter emulator connected. Should be fine. Can I close this? Okay, while it's running, we can take a look at the main file. So just now I was running main development because I can see from here it says launch development. So the entry point is this one. And then so it's a bootstrap function that calls the app widget. I will close this. Okay, so again, it's a stateless widget. It contains the material app. We have already seen how we can use this as the top level widget to show our app. And then our home is this one, counter page. So this is what you see in here in our emulator. Okay, now it might seem like a lot, but I will explain later. So first we have a block provider. So block provider is responsible for providing a block or a qubit to the widget tree. So what is the block that is providing is this one, the counter qubit. So if we take a look at the counter qubit, is a class that extends the qubit. This is from the block package. So maybe I haven't explained how do you use a custom package. So if you want to use a custom package, you'll need to add them to pubspec. And then here, there are the dependencies. Of course, when you are bootstrapping using the very good CLI, you already have the block and Flutter block in your dependencies. So if you cannot find them, you can just type them like the package name and then followed by the version number that you want. So this symbol means that you want anything that is equals or above this package version. So if you leave it blank, then it will automatically get the latest version from pub.dev. Okay, since we already have that, I will leave this and then go back to our counter qubit. So let's see what's inside the qubit. So you have a super constructor, and this contains 0. So what does the 0 mean? This 0 is referring to the initial state of our qubit. So you can see here it's extending qubit with the block base of state. And our state here is actually an integer. So we put the integer type here. And here, this will have to match whatever type that you put here. Since it's an integer and we want the initial state to be 0, we put 0 here. Okay, and then after that, you can see in Qubit, we have functions that will be responsible for state changes. So you have two functions, increment and decrement. So in increment, you are emitting a new state. And what is the value of the new state? Is the value of the current state plus 1. And then for decrement is the current state minus 1. So straightforward enough. Let's go back to the counter page. And then here, you can see that, okay, our child is a counter view. So inside the counter view, again, we have a scaffold. You are familiar by now. And then we also have the body. The body has a counter text. So what's inside the counter text? Let's see. So counter text is a stateless widget that contains just a text, and then it contains the count. What is this count? This count comes from the counter qubit. So select means you are reading from the qubit that you define here. And what do you want? You want the current state. So this is a shorthand way to say that I want to listen or subscribe to this particular value. So since we are only interested in the value of the state, so we just put qubit.state here. And then after that, we can refer to it in our text widget. So let's go back to the parent. And then, of course, you have the floating action button on the side here. You have two buttons. One is the increment button. One is the decrement button. So the increment button, what does it do? On press, it will call the increment function from the counter qubit. And for the decrement button, it will call the decrement function. And you have already seen in our qubit what it does to the state. So it's a very clean way to separate the logic from your presentation. And then in this way, your UI, so your presentation, you just have to focus on linking the event handlers and also on rendering based on the state. So that is the basic concept for qubit. And now actually we can see how we can modify this based on our first feature request. I think now we are pretty close to meet our friend's request of showing the tab count. It's just that when I tap on the screen, actually nothing happens because my increment listener is here. So the function is linked to this button. So it's only when I tap on this one, the count would increase. So now the question is, how do I link it to the whole body of the scaffold? Okay, so this part, you can make use of the gesture detector that I have already showed you just now. So what do you want to attach the listener to, the tab listener to? You want to attach it to our body. So what we can do is you can wrap this. There's a quick way of wrapping. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you can see show actions here. And it has all the shortcut action that you can use. So actually, we are wrapping with a gesture detector widget that is not here. So we will just choose wrap with widget and then gesture detector. Yes. So now we have our gesture detector, but actually it doesn't do anything yet because we haven't defined the on-tap listener. So what we can do is it has the on-tap, and then this will call the increment function from counter qubit. So when you save this, hopefully it works. No, it doesn't, because the gesture detector, it also has an argument called the behavior. So this behavior will, the default behavior is defer to child. So what we want is opaque, so that it actually will listen to this whole container even when there's nothing in it. So now it works when I tap on the body of the scaffold. Okay, now we have fulfilled the first requirement. Let's go back to the slide. Where is my slide? Let me try to share again. It's not this one. Okay, so now we have a second request from your friend. It says, well, I want the app to give me some indications, like showing a snap bar on every 10 steps, to give some motivation, some encouragement when I'm taking more steps. So now we can go back to the app and see how we can do this. Okay, right. So how do we show a snack bar based on the state? Okay, now is the time that we introduce another type of widget that we haven't seen. That is a block listener. So let's include it here. Wrap the scaffold with a block listener. And then we want to listen on the counter qubit. Since we want to do something based on the state changes of the qubit. So this is the type of the state, integer. So we can do something here. Let's actually first check if it's working. So just print the state and then open our console and see what happens. So as I increment or decrement, you can see that on the console is printing out the state numbers. So it is working. Okay, now the next step is I want to show the snack bar. So how to show a snack bar is you use the scaffold messenger. And then inside here, you have the snack bar. So you need to put a snack bar widget inside. Okay, my snack bar widget is text. Something encouraging. Awesome, another 10 steps. Okay, put some trailing commas to make it more readable. What else is complaining? This is the linting. It says prefer cons with constant constructors. Okay, I'll let you fix this. And then hit save. So now whenever you press this, it will show a snack bar, but actually it will show on every step. So this is still not what we want. What we want is on every 10 step. So let's add some condition here. If state is divisible by 0, then we put this, and we will show a snack bar. Okay, now let's see if it's working. Okay, another 10 steps. It shows another 10 steps. Okay, so the snack bar is working, but it's a bit annoying that whenever I reach the 10 step, then the previous snack bar is still showing. So it's a bit confusing to user. So let's also hide the current snack bar when I'm showing, just before I show it. So now when I'm at here, then it will hide the previous one and show a new one. So I think we have fulfilled our friend's requirement this time. And then let's see if he has other requests. So I will go back to my slide again. It's quite annoying. I have to do this every time. Okay, so your friend come back to you and say, well, he tested the app. It looks good, but when I only want the snap bar to show when it's incrementing, not when it's also decrementing, like from 71 to 70, it shouldn't show this. Okay, now how would you change this? To change this is actually a bit tricky because you also need to know the previous state so that you will know it's increasing or decreasing. Right now, you only keep track of the current state, then you wouldn't know whether it's increasing or decreasing. So now, how do we refactor our app to meet that request? So we need the previous count and the current count at the same time. And then, so we need to make changes to our state. And here we only have the integer, but in block we can define our custom state. So this is what we are going to do. Here we can create a new file called counter state. So let's create a counter state. And what's inside our counter state is current count and the previous count. Previous count can be now. And then we need to create a constructor for this. So that's not all. We still need something to help us to check if the previous state is equals to the current state. And to do this, I will introduce a new trick that is you can override the what do you call this operator? Equal? Yeah, the equality operator to tell Flutter that, hey, I want you to tell me that the state is different when certain values inside has changed. So in this case, it's actually the current count and the previous count. Whenever one of these value has changed, I want you to tell me that it's different. It's a different state. So for this one, I will not do the overriding myself. I will get the help of a package called Equatable. So let's do that. I will go to my pub spec and add a new package. So let's see what is the latest version we have. 2.0.3. Save it. After it has run the Flutter pub-get, then we can use it in our app. So how to use it is you can extend Equatable. And then Equatable will need you to create, to override the get props. So here is where you define, okay, how do you identify whether this state has changed? So it's when the current count or the previous count has changed. And let's fix this. Sorry, it's a bit noisy here. All right, now we have created the counter state. We can come back to our qubit and change it. So here we have the counter state, And of course here it will complain because the type doesn't match anymore. So it needs to be a counter state object, and initial count is 0. Previous count would be now because you haven't done anything yet. So then after that you have to also change the increment and decrement function. This will be the counter state. This will be the state plus 1. Sorry, not state plus 1. State.current count plus 1. And then the previous count would be state.current count. Okay, then the same thing for decrement. I will just copy this, change this to -1. Okay, now here we also have to fix, because here we are still assuming the state to be integer, which is not. So import counter state. This would be current count. And what else? We might have to restart it. Oh, I see. We still haven't changed the display. So this would be actually count dot my backspace is not working. What happened? Oh no. How can I do this demo without the backspace? Can I override this? Ah, yes. So this is the delete is also not working. I see. Okay, I think I have to do something, and then I just copy over from a different screen, because this is not working. So, okay, let's just change this one. Okay, now the current count is displayed and everything is still working. Okay, but obviously we are still not meeting our friend's requirement yet, because it's still showing when it's decrementing. But now we already have the previous state. We can do an additional check if the state is incrementing. So what we can do is we go back to the state, and then we have one extra getter that checks if it's incrementing. So it's incrementing when it is bigger than the current count is bigger than the previous count. And this has error because it says the type doesn't match, because this can be nullable, and when it's nullable, then it wouldn't know what to do. So let's tell Flutter what to do when it's nullable, when it's null. So we will use 0. Okay, then we can go back here. Sorry, go back here, and then put an extra condition here, only when it's incrementing. Okay, now we can check if it works. We will go back to 9 and 10. Okay, at least incrementing is showing. and then go to 11, go back down, then it's not showing. So I think we have fulfilled our friend's request. Okay, I think we are running out of time. I will show you his final request. That is, he wants to be able to undo when there is an accidental tap. So this, there are two ways to achieve this, but I will show you one way that you can apply to other projects, because like when your state gets complicated, then you can use that package to help you. Yes, I'm using a package because I'm lazy. So let me find the page. So there is a replay block package that you can use, and it's very easy to use. Instead of qubit, you just use replay qubit. You just have to replace the qubit with replay qubit, and then after that you can define your qubit as usual. You can also use a block, it doesn't have to be a qubit. And after that, if you want to undo the change, you just call qubit.undo. Or you can also redo the change by calling the qubit.redo. So yeah, because of time constraint, I'm not gonna show that. I will quickly talk about the other stuff that I want to cover. So another app, I don't think I have time to show you, but these slides I will share. I will share with the organizer, so you can also get to check out the app when you have time. Actually, I will still go through the structure within the app because it's quicker that way. So let me pull open the app that I have already cloned. So I will close this now and see what's inside here. Okay, so in the first glance, you will see, okay, I have the lib folder that contains all my source file. And then because it's bootstrapped from the very good CLI, it has the 3 main Dart file for different flavors. This is for different environment. And then after that, you will see, okay, where is my home? Just to make sure that this okay, it's actually opening the app first. So this is our top level app. And then at the top level, you have repository provider. So what is a repository? Repository is sitting on your data layer. Is responsible for fetching data for your app. So let's look at one of the repository and see what it does. So in the repository, in the Rocket repository, it's just a class. It's just a simple class that takes in the API client. So we are not calling the API directly from our app. We are actually calling a method from the repository, and then the repository will be responsible to fetch whatever you need from the API client. So there is a clear separation of concern here, so that in future, if you have different data source, you have a different API, you don't have to change everything from your presentation or from your business logic layer. You can just change it in your repository layer. And then here you can call the API client to fetch the rockets. And another good thing about having your own repository class is you can throw a custom exception to do custom error handling. So you have everything contained within the repository that is related to data fetching or anything or any API calls. So, and then you will notice that the repository are sitting in a different folder called packages. And if we go to the pub spec, you can see that they are actually considered a totally different package. So you have the crew member repository inside our dependency. You also have the Rocket repository. You also have the API client itself. So you with different packages, the advantage is you can you can maintain them separately. So if when you are upgrading something, you can upgrade separately. You don't have to change everything at once. And also when there's something that you need to change here, it doesn't affect your app. So this is a very good tip that it's a very good trick that I like to have a good scalable app. Okay, so now you have a quick look at the repository. And then in our app, we just have to put them in a repository provider. And whichever that comes under as a child from the provider, it will have access to the value. Actually, we can take a look at how it is used. So I think it is used inside the rockets. Okay, it's used inside the rockets qubit because here it is reading the rocket repository instance from our widget tree that is provided by the repository provider. So when you do this, then the rockets qubit will have access to the repository. And then inside our rockets qubit, we will call the fetch all rockets from the rocket repository. So once this is called, then it will return the rockets if it's successful. Then it will emit a new rocket state, which later in our rockets page, we can use that to render. See, we can use context.select to show the rocket status. So when there's error, you can also throw and not here you are catching it and emitting a different rocket state. So you are emitting a failure state that later your page can show some error messages or an error screen. So you can see that how they are related. First, you have the repository talking to the API client. And then after that, you have qubits that talks to the repository. Then after that, you have the Rockets page, which is our Flutter widget that talks to the Rockets qubit. And Rockets page will not talk directly to the repository because we want to contain all the logics of that communication within our qubits or block. So yes, that would be the demo for this app. And for the last part, unfortunately, we don't have time to cover for the testing. But before this, I have already presented somewhere, I think last year in Google Developer Space. So you can check out a video where I talk more in depth about testing. So, so far you have seen a lot of things. It might be confusing for you and you are not sure where to start. Here, I also included a roadmap that I personally find useful. You can use the roadmap as a guidance for you to get started or continue your Flutter journey. So a quick recap before we end today's session. You have learned that in Flutter, everything is a widget. And you can use the widget to do a lot of customization, not just in terms of UI, but also logic. And then you learn about the block pattern and how you can use the stream and then the block and qubits in your app to contain all the business logics. And with the repository pattern, you also learn how to separate the data layer from all the other components. And I didn't have time to cover this, but testing is your friend. Please don't forget your very dear friend, because when it comes to scalable apps, there are a lot of changes that you have to make. So you need something that can be a safety net when you are making changes so it doesn't break after a few features. All right. Yeah, so that will be it. I will pass the stage back to Siyuan.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful session. Thanks for Miss Chong Shean for showing us how to build a scalable Flutter application. I mean, I also do learn Flutter, and before that, I only know how to use provider. And thanks to her, now I also learned about stream and also BLC, which is block. Okay, so Miss, do we still have time for you to answer some of the Q&A? The
Yeah,
chat box?
sure. We can take a few questions.
Yeah, so guys, I will pick the question I see. So if I miss out a question, maybe you can repaste the question again. So the first question I see is from, I'm not really sure how to pronounce her username, so but okay,
Man in
here's the
black.
question. What's the difference between block and getX? Yeah.
Well, Redux is something that I have seen, but I haven't personally tried before. So unfortunately, I cannot answer this. But if not mistaken, Redux is they intend for people to use it for everything, not just for state management, but also for rendering widgets, which personally I think is not very good for future updates, because if, let's say, Galax stop updating at some point of time while Flutter still continues to evolve, and then your whole app is already written in the pattern of Galax, then you find yourself tightly coupled with the package, which I think is not very good. So personally, I like to stick with something that is, a bit more versatile, that you can rely on them for a long time. But if they suddenly gone out of maintenance, you can replace them. You can quickly replace them with something else. So yeah, that is all I can say.
Okay. Thanks for the answer. So next time maybe you can look at it's a question from okay, maybe you answer this one first. Is there any communities that are good to hire Fractal developers? Well, I'm just a student. Definitely not me to answer it.
Okay. This one actually, let's see. I actually am moderating a Facebook group. It's called Flutter/Dart Malaysia. So inside there, sometimes companies or recruiters, they will post a job advertisement. So you can check it out there. I will also share the link with Siyuan. Let me just quickly get the link.
Okay, sure. Okay, I received it. Wait, I'll share it with you guys now.
It's called Flutter and Dart Malaysia community. You can also search it in Facebook.
Right, send it out.
All right. Mm.
Okay, then maybe we'll look at the next question. Can I ask about Flutter standard says to do international? About your opinion? This is a question from Chi Yong.
I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly. If you're referring to internationalization, the translation for different languages. So if that's the case, actually I can also show you here. I believe it's included in the example app. Let me pull the app again. Too many windows. Okay, let me get the SpaceX demo. So here there is the L10N dot. I think I didn't touch on this. So this is just a simple extension method that you can use on build context. And how you put the translation is just inside here, the ARB files. So an ARB file is a JSON-like file where you just define the label for your translation. So this is a unique key. And then after that, you have the string itself. And then for different languages, then you just have to append with the language code of the language. Then here, okay, here you define it is the Spanish. And then you have English here. So from this example, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You just need to include the description. Sometimes you need the placeholder because it's a dynamic argument. So if let's say you pass this to a translator, then you don't want them to, to be able to change this part. It's just a placeholder. Yeah, and to use them in the app is with context.l10n. So you just get the L10n object, and then after that you put the phrase key here to display it. Instead of showing the hard-coded string, you just put the key. Okay. I hope that answer your questions.
I think that definitely do answer my question that I have regarding how to translate apps. Okay, so Ji Young, if Miss didn't answer your question, maybe you can post your question again and try to clarify it. Okay, moving on next, we have a question from Saket. Yeah, how do you see Flutter Web? This is also something I'm kind of interested to know.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned in the introduction to Flutter part that the support for web is still early but stable. So personally, I don't have experience to write a Flutter app that built for web yet, but I have seen a lot of people doing that. And with the new navigator package, the new navigator update in the later Flutter versions, it makes the navigation in web much easier. So you can define the URL patterns in a detailed way, just like how you would do in normal web apps with React or Vue or Angular. So it's getting more mature, but I don't think I have enough experience to speak about this. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that, because I saw people using Flutter app did quite a nice UI for a dashboard, which sometimes makes me think of trying to switch to Flutter at some time. Okay, so yeah, again, question from Midda. What is the learning curve of Flutter and jobs opportunity for Flutter developers compared to React Native or native app developers?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So
Indeed.
the learning curve, I think, it depends on your background. For me, previously, before I was a Flutter developer, I was mainly developing in React. And for me, switching to Flutter is a very smooth process because the way it declares the UI is kind of similar to React. You also have the hierarchy of the UI components. And then the only difference is it is object-oriented, so it's just a bit of syntax changes. And yeah, for me, of course, the learning curve is easier. I'm not sure about people who starting from different background or starting from scratch. But from what I know, is Dart itself, the language is quite easy to learn. As long as you have grasped the concept of object-oriented programming, and you have read the language tour page that I share with you, you are pretty much ready to start. And there's a lot of materials out there now for you to learn, free or paid, in YouTube videos, a lot of them. And job opportunity, I would say now, in LinkedIn, I also receive a lot of inquiries. Hey, are you interested with this Flutter developer position? So I think it's definitely in the job market demand right now. So don't have to worry about that. Compared to React Native or native app developers, I still see a lot of React Native developer job postings, but I do believe that Flutter is now slowly taking over the cross-platform app development market. So yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for the insight. I think as a student myself, I think that Flutter is definitely a trend because I saw a lot of job posting with quite a high
Yeah.
salary. Makes me wanna try it sometime.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think we can take two more questions. So yeah, I think last call. I think Sarah just take the last call question. But let's look at the question for Saket first. Do you know any major changes from Flutter 1.22 to 2.1, 2.10? Oh, that's quite a specific question.
Yeah, this I can answer because I have personally went through the pain of upgrading from Flutter 1 to version 2, because there's a lot of changes. The biggest changes is the null safety. So in Flutter 1, you don't have the null safety feature. It's newly introduced in Flutter 2. So the null safety feature refers to all these symbols that you see. There is the question mark. There is also the exclamation mark that you see somewhere. Those are the null safety checks, which I think is really good. I really like the feature. The only complaint that I have was the pain of upgrading from Flutter 1 to 2. But I remember there is a migration tool that is official. It's provided by the Flutter team. That one can help you to solve most of the pain. But you still have to go through the changes one by one. And yeah, so this is when you realize testing is so important, right? So when you are making those major changes and you are really worried with, whether those changes are correct and whether it breaks your app. So yes, a lot of major changes from Flutter 1 to 2. I can spend a long time just to describe the changes, but yeah, there are some tools to help you. Just it will be quite a pain.
All right, so as someone start from Flutter 2, I think I couldn't comment much. I just start from Flutter 2. I don't know anything about Flutter 1. Okay, so last question from Sarah. If we see material online, is there an easy way to tell is Flutter 2.0 or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's an important question for beginners because it's not always straightforward to tell. So for me, because Flutter 2 has the now safety feature, So you just have to look for the symbols, like the question mark or the exclamation mark. Then you see, okay, this material is from Flutter 2. If there is no such symbol, it's also possible that everything inside is not nullable, but it's not very likely. So that's, for me, the simplest way to tell if it's Flutter 2.
All right. So, yeah, I think that's all for today that we have. Once again, because I think that we already took Miss quite a lot of time. It's already 10:20. So, once again, thanks for Miss Chong Shean for today's sharing, and also thanks for everyone attending this session. So, feel free to connect with Miss Chong Shean on her LinkedIn. Her LinkedIn is pretty active. I'm also following her. Yeah, and last thing is to promote my club. So also feel free to subscribe our channel. We have more activity coming soon. So yeah, thanks everyone. That's all for tonight, and have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Okay,
me.
thank you.
Have a great evening.